Hey guys, all right. So, this class we're going to be discussing week 10 and 11 slides. Next week we'll be doing week 12 and 13. All right. So, what are some ethical issues concerning employees? So we talked about ethical issues with stakeholders and people who run the business owners. So, what about concerning the employees? All the ethical issues with the employees. So, first one is harassment, discrimination. Is probably the largest ethical issue that's facing business owners today. We all know harassment and discrimination as we see it all the time. See it on social media. We see it everywhere. People are harassing each other for the way they look, their religion, their culture, all that stuff. Um, Number two is health and safety in the workplace. So some ethical issues could arise when employees or managers are not creating a safe work environment for their employees, and they're asking their employees to go do things that are unsafe where the employee actually gets injured. So that's another ethical issue. Whistleblowing and media rants. So business owners must be able to respect and not penalize employees who are deemed whistleblowers. We all know what whistleblowers are, right? So if someone does something wrong, the person who blows the whistle. I think I have a whistle here. Look at this. I got a whistle right here. I think it's so crap. Hmm. These were whistles given to us by a company. I met a guy who created these whistles that are like the best for sports. So even in horrible weathers and stuff that you can just leave. Anyways, so whistleblowing and media rants. So business owners must be able to respect each other, right? So that's one of the issues, or concerning ethical issues concerning employees is they need to be able to uh, be uh, able to speak their mind and say what's going on without having management or anyone um, uh, reprimanding them or giving them um, time off or suspensions or stuff like that, right? So they can't have any negative consequences for that. Ethics and accounting practices. So you see this a lot in businesses, right? You have a lot of accountants who are doing fraud. They're hiding numbers and stuff to avoid taxes and stuff like that. So that's another issue. Non-disclosure and corporate espionage. So basically, a non-disclosure is signed when a company they hire someone. Let's say they hire a salesperson, um, and actually, you know what? Let's say they hire a CEO. So the CEO ends up learning everything about that business, right? So he or she learns everything from trade secrets. Wow. Sorry, guys. Learn everything from trade secrets to um, how companies work, what type, like the ins and outs of a business, basically. So a non-disclosure means they're not allowed to take that information and give it to anybody else if they leave the company or while they're with the company. So many employers are at risk of current and former employees stealing information, including client data, used by organizations in direct competition, right? So you can have a company working for Coca-Cola. They, a CEO working for Coca-Cola, he would, let's say that he leaves and goes to Pepsi and takes all the trade secrets, right? Like the ingredients and all that stuff. So non-disclosure. So that's an ethical issue facing employees, right? Because employees need to understand that they can't do that. They're not allowed to do that. Corporate espionage. When intellectual property is stolen or private client information is legally distributed, this constitutes as corporate espionage. Okay, so when people are stealing stuff and all that, that's corporate espionage. And then technology and privacy practices. So developments in technological security capabilities pose privacy concerns for clients and employees alike. So basically, what employees do is what another ethical thing is when you have a bunch of data from different people within your company. So, for example, a bank that has everybody's SIN numbers and all that stuff, or CRA that has everyone's tax information and all that. employees that work there need to be extremely ethical and responsible, and know that they can't do any of that. Uh, uh, that Basically illegal stuff where you're taking people's SIN numbers and handing it out to fraud people, selling it to fraud people so they can go and open up accounts and stuff like that. So those are some ethical issues concerning employees. What are some major influences on supply chains? So we all know what a supply chain is, right? Supply chain is uh, basically when you take a raw material and turn it into a finished product. That process is called the supply chain. So there are four major influences on the way supply chains work. These are all very important. Successful adaptation of supply chains to perform ethically and properly. So first off, the facility. So the facility is where the production actually takes place, um, where the raw materials and everything get transported to in order to become the final product. Inventory is how much stock you have. Transportation is the type of transportation used to bring in the raw materials and send out the finished products. And then information, which is the customer demand. So all of these have to be, they're all very important in successful adaptation of supply chains. What's an NGO, non-government organization? So organizations which are independent of government involvement. Very self-explanatory. Non-government organization. So if you're an independent organization that's not part of a government, you are known as a non-government organization or NGO. NGOs are a subgroup of organizations founded by citizens, which include clubs and associations that provide services to their members and others. The term is generally accepted to include non-profit, private organizations that operate outside of government control. Some NGOs rely primarily on volunteers, while others support paid staff. The World Bank identifies two groups of NGOs: operational and advocacy NGOs. Which so operationals, which focus on design and implementation of development projects, and advocacy, which defend or promote specific cause and seek to influence public policy. So NGO basically is a group of people, an organization that come together that don't regulate under the government. They do everything on their own, um, and they're basically it's for the betterment of the for the economy and for the people. So how are they funded? How is a non-government organization funded? So membership dues, private donations, sale of goods and services, grants. And despite their independence from government, some NGOs rely heavily on government funding. Large NGOs may have budgets in the millions or billions of dollars. Types of NGOs. This is nothing too important here. There's Ingo, Gongo, Congo, Ingo, like, but these are all just different parts of different types of NGOs. INGO, an international NGO, for example, the Conference of INGO and the Council of Europe, there are 300 more participating INGOs. GO-NGO, this means government organized NGO, often derogatory. Foreign policy describes GO-NGO as a government-backed. So if you're a GO-NGO, then you're government-backed NGO. Um, INGO is international non-government organization. QUANGO is British. It's a British term. Um, it's for people in England and stuff in Britain who have NGOs. And ENGOs is an environmental NGO, so like Greenpeace or World Wildlife Fund that's like helping the environment. Okay, so there's a bunch of different types of NGOs. Not too important, so we're not going to get too heavily into this. Uh, so what is the media's influence on corporations? So how does media play a role in in the way corporations behave, in the way that corporations act? So let's just say that. So here, going off the point. So we all know how uh, media is, how it's It's how majority of the people around the world get their information, right? So if you're looking for news, you would go on some sort of media outlet to try and figure out what's happening, right? It has the ability to change perceptions, create new perceptions, and alter attitudes and behaviors of the masses, right? So if you have with media, there's so many different things you could do, right? You can um, media has so many different ways of influencing people. Um, there's this, the amount of people who live their life based off what they hear off social media or just media in general is is incredible, which is probably around, I would say, just looking at what how the economy is going, there's at least 70% of the population, 75% gets all their information from media. No one really gets their information from actual real life. So for example, um, when Trump was talking about um, China and how China's destroying the US market, no one really understood what he was talking about because they didn't see it firsthand. 90% of people didn't see it firsthand. There was a few 10% of people, which I was one of them, who saw what this guy was talking about. I saw it firsthand. And I saw it when I was looking at, when I was working in trading commodities. China, what they did was they bought like millions and millions of tons of soybean and canola seeds and oil and product, right? And these were for future. These are future contracts. So let's say it was 2015, they were buying it for delivery in 2016, 2017. Okay, so what the U.S. market did was they started ramping up their production. So they started manufacturing a ton of these, uh, a ton of this product, right? Started growing and and processing and all that stuff. So they had a huge supply ready to send to China. What China then did was they had their borders, the people, the ships at the borders, at the docks, they went on strike. So when they go on strike, that means that the docks are all closed. So China can't receive all this product anymore. So when the market was trading at 50 cents per pound, now there's so much supply and no demand. What happens to the price? The price falls, right? Price falls heavily. So that's what happened to the US economy. And people didn't understand that. So they were, when Trump was saying this stuff and media was showing him as a bad person, saying that China is this and China is that, look how Trump is talking about Chinese people. They didn't understand. They went based off what the media was saying. They didn't understand what Trump was saying actually had a point, right? It actually had, he was actually making a point. So what are you going to do, right? Media influences people so much that they start believing different things. Media sheds light on corporations that are doing good work, but media mostly sheds light on corporations that are behaving unethically, like we spoke about the Volkswagen scandal. Volkswagen scandal was huge, and the media outlets were all over it, showing everybody what was happening. So corporations have been put on high alert as of recent years, seeing as media outlets are publishing more and more scandals that large corporations have been involved in, right? So corporations are now, they're afraid. They're saying, if we do what we used to do years ago before media was such a big thing, if we continue doing that, there's going to be whistleblowers, we're going to be shown on front page of the news, and our stock is going to fall significantly, right? And this is very, very true for public companies. Private companies, okay, yes, it could affect their bottom line, but with a public company, it could affect them extremely, extremely badly because their stock price depends on how well their name is doing in the market. So media's influence on corporations is huge, right? Nothing gets management's attention faster than negative media attention. So your management, nothing gets their attention faster than if someone puts an article saying that this company who's publicly traded has done this, and you see this, and all you see is the stock price just drop. So media has changed the way corporations do business and treat their stakeholders. So businesses before media was so big, because they had so much power and so much money, the way they would treat their employees, the way they would treat the environment, the way they would um, use their money, their finances, resources to get what they wanted. It used to happen all the time, and it used to happen extremely unethically, and people would lose their lives and they lose their livelihoods and lose their happiness over the way that these corporations were handling themselves. Because of media, and I'm not saying media is a bad thing, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but because of media, there's now an ability to shine a light on all these dark portions, dark places of corporations. So people are now, corporations are a lot more afraid. They're a lot more, I guess, when it comes to performing ethically, they're a lot more alert and a lot more focused on making sure things, what they do is ethical and not unethical, right? So there's something called an economic think tank. Okay, so basically, an economic think tank, what it is a organization that comes together that tries to think of ways to study and reflect on economic issues. So they're essentially economic policy institutes that work to develop and propose economic strategies and policies to benefit the overall economy. Economic think tanks can be publicly or privately funded, and as such can be under scrutiny for being biased towards the special interests of the donors or political factions within the government. That's a negative that comes out of it, right? Usually think tanks are supposed to be for the greater good of the human race, right? They're supposed to be for the greater good of the economy. Sometimes when you have, let's just say, for example, Volkswagen, what they could have done is they could have started up an economic think tank, which they were feeding money to, and those economic think tanks would then put together proposals and strategies that would benefit Volkswagen, right? Because they were the ones funding them. So if Volkswagen wanted to start doing diesel engines, they would put out think tanks that are trying to show the benefit of diesel engines. Okay, so that's what they're saying here. So it could be seen as biased. To succeed, think tanks need at least four elements. You need good ideas, people or actors to support those ideas, resources to help nurture those ideas into something, and an ability to seize the moment the timing is right. So just like anything in life, right? You need the right people, the money, the timing, all of that. That's the key to life, right? For you to progress in life, you need a lot of things to fall in place. You could have all the money in the world, but you don't have the time. You can have all the time in the world, but you don't have the resources. You have all the resources in the world, but you don't have the right people. You have the right people in the world, but you don't have. It's just not the right time, right? Usually, greatness is achieved when all those things meet, and you just take advantage of that opportunity and just kill it. That's usually how greatness is really achieved. And finally, we're going to talk about the relationship between education and society. So education and society both are interrelated and interdependent because both mutually influence each other, right? Without education, how can we build a society, an ideal society? And without society, how can we organize an education system? Education helps individuals learn how to live, behave, organize, everything in their lives. So it's an agent which brings change to society, or we can say in one line, education is a social change agent. If society is well structured and have ideals, then it automatically affects the education. Social structure is generally built in religion, the way of living life, philosophy of members of society, politics, economy, and it has some good ideals which help every individual and contribute in, and helps every individual and contribute in society. After all, educationalists, experts, and psychologists come from society who mold education, blah 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 blah. Basically, what this is saying is education and society goes hand in hand. If you if you were to build envision a society for yourself or for your people, you would need to then, okay, you have everything in place. This is how I want it to be, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be like this, like this. Then you need education to help people take you to create that vision. So education is going to help these people create that vision in order to live in that life. So what we're doing here at Pures is we're educating you guys who are coming from a completely different world, right? You guys are from a completely different world than we are in right now. We're educating you on how to come and be uh, come and how to adapt into a life like this, because a life like this is extremely different than where you guys are coming from. So that's the educational system. This is the way you guys learn on how things work here in Canada, so that you guys can assimilate and adapt easier. Okay? So that's the relationship between education and society. So you guys are getting education so you guys can easily assimilate into society. All right, kids, that is it. I'll be seeing you in class.